I'm having to redo some of this tar paper because during a lot of the weather over the past few months I've been blowing it and kind of just ripping it off. I was planning on getting this done sooner so that I wouldn't have to do this, but I just couldn't get to it because of the weather. But I guess that's the thing you have to deal with. But I did get the sheeting here for a really good price, by a fraction of the cost, and I'm going to use this. It's the shiny galvanized steel, and this is going to have some insulation properties because I'm going to put a layer, or put down some wood on here, so it'll have like a little inch gap there between this paneling and the OSB. So this is the idea. Pretty much got all these screwed in here. I'm gonna have 2 more on the ridge here. The sheeting will just go on top of that. I'm just kind of calculating in my mind what I need to do, what the measurements are and all that stuff before I tackle this. This is the most risky part of it, and there's really no easy way of doing it. I'm in the process of cutting out the window and the door area. This door area needs to be cut out right there a little bit more. Then I'm going to put some OSB to cover that area. I didn't record this cutting out because I just forgot, but I just used a drill to drill 4 holes in each corner, and I used my Sawzall to cut out the rest, and I'll be doing the same thing here. You have to get inventive when you don't have the right tools, because ideally you can get a router and just drill it in there, and the router just kind of guides along the rim. But since I didn't have that, I just drilled a hole there in each corner. You just got a Sawzall, stuck it in there. I just had to be real careful because this can get really wavy, and so I just had to cut it slow, but it worked out all right. Just trimmed it up a little bit, and then let's do the same there for this. So I ran out of this wrap here, but I was just going to use the tar paper anyways. I've seen other people do that before. Works the same. Working on these windows, the flashing gets expensive with this flashing and just the little details, but I'd rather have it done right than just throwing something together. But I watched a lot of YouTube videos about how to do this window seal and the flashing and all that stuff. I'll put those links down below, but this is going to be kind of nerve-wracking for me because every step of the way it's kind of nerve-wracking, just because I'm just hoping that I'm doing everything right and I don't miss a step or whatever and have to undo something. But I'm just trying to get this wrapping on before the rain comes again, so I have it all sealed up. I'm about to put this window in. You know, I'm getting confident and faster at this, but it's just, you hit one of those moments where you're just like, holy crap, am I doing this right? And so that's one of these moments, and so I just kind of run through things in my mind. But I'm at the point of putting this window in here and sealing it in, and just have to go for it. It's become a little more clear what I'm trying to do here, or I haven't seen anybody do it. I'm sure somebody's probably done it, but when you put a little gap in there between the outside panels and the sheathing, then you get your insulation value right there with the air gap. That's what I was going for. And I've seen people do this method with a roof when they're switching over into a metal roofing. They essentially just put these boards like this across like that on just right on top of the shingles, and then they screw in the sheeting on top of that. In my camper over here, or my cargo into a camper, I was thinking of the same concept. That's, if you want to keep your camper cool, you gotta have a shield over it, or basically some shade. And I've thought of this concept, applying it to a camper or something, that is essentially, that gap is giving you that shade from the sun. And the same concept is just putting a tree over it, or just a sheet over it to block it from the sun. Anytime that the material is touching it, the heat is going to just kind of soak through it. So this prevents that from happening. Plus, it's shiny, so it'll have this reflective value to it. And just like that foil bubble wrap that I'm going to do on the inside has that same kind of value to that sheeting paneling, so I'm hoping it'll just do the same thing. I'm working on this door now with the bottom part of this. I made my own little door pan thing out of an aluminum strip. Found this laying around and just kind of cut it and bent it to where I needed it, to the measurement of the bottom of the door frame. And then I'm going to use some roof patch under and just kind of spread it around. I mean, the basic idea is just to keep water out, draining this way. So my camera is acting up again, so I'm not able to get a lot of in between stuff, but I'm just pointing out the most important things. This is the way I'm doing it. I just put some goopy waterproofing stuff just on the wood itself. Then I have my little pan type thing that I made from aluminum, and then I'm just gonna use more adhesive stuff, waterproofing, just right under the door frame, and then I'll squish that on there, and then it'll just, so that's one of the things I had to learn and figure out, because that's going to be the most critical for all the water going in there, and and I also put this plate, some more of the aluminum sheeting there. I put some adhesive on the wall there, and then I just nailed in this part. Gives it some additional protection. And then the other metal sheet, when I get it in there, it's going to overlap this a little bit, and I'm going to bend it down, so if any water gets in there, it'll just kind of go over everything. So wow, that is a cool feeling. Once that door went on there, closed and sealed, it felt like one of those milestones or whatever. Feels like a house. So this will be kind of a shed shop type thing. Could even insulate it, work over winter inside it. So awesome. Okay, that's a good feeling. I can't express that enough. I mean, many of you have probably done this before, but this is just, when you do something on your own and you just feel stuff working like that, this is a good, rewarding feeling. And so I'm going to use this foil wrap again for the entire insulation. And I feel like I'm only gonna put one layer in. Some people staple in maybe a couple layers, but I'm just gonna do one layer. I could do another layer later if I need to. But this combined with my little idea with the sheet metal on the outside, putting a board right between the sheathing and the metal panels, and that's going to provide about an inch of air insulation gap. I put my face close to those panels, and you could feel the heat reflecting back from my face, just as this stuff does. And you could feel it. Even if you put your hand right next to it, you feel the heat reflecting right back to your hand. That's why I love this stuff. And it has the air bubbles in between, which is the air gap. So stuff is so easy to put on, and I'm pretty confident it's gonna be a really good insulation for this thing. So I'm kind of putting into play my camper, experience. That's all I'm doing. Real simple. Staple gun, just right on the side there, and I did it about halfway between that 2x4. So there's a couple inches of gap there. Really simple and fast. So I won't show me doing all of this, but I just wanted to show at least one of them. So here's a quick overview where I'm at right now. Got this pretty much all the way around the walls, and I have yet to do the loft area. I'm gonna wait on that because I'm gonna have to do some wiring and stuff, but it's probably hard to see up there. I'm getting a little more confident that I can do this. I don't have to straddle the roof up there, and just the little learning curves that I have to work through, and I just try to make that straight. And every panel I put up, it's not exactly straight, and I have to make sure I manipulate it, kind of stretch the bottom or the top out just a tad. And that's good thing about this roof sheeting or side paneling, whatever it is, metal sheeting, is that you do have a little bit of room to adjust. Like some of these grooves here can be stretched a little bit, and in fact some people drill on top, the screw on top of this through it, and then if they want to, they could screw just a tad bit more to stretch it out to manipulate it to make it straight. That's the only thing I've been really focusing on. So this first row was pretty slow, faster than I thought though. Thought it was going to be way more intensive getting up on the roof and coming back down and everything, but I was able to do it that way. So this is how I'm constructing it. So there's just a little bit of gap in there. The other panel is going to slide in right there with the grooves. These screws with the washers on it, the rubber washer, you have to make sure you're screwed in just so the rubber washer just starts squishing. If you screw it in way too much, then that rubber washer will eventually probably crack and bust out of there. So I'd have to like pretty much put a screw in or two. If it's not completely straight, I kind of push it down or pull it like that, and it kind of straightens out. So you just have to do small moves each time you do it. When you get to this point, you get excited just because you start seeing the results. One of the challenges in keeping these bolts all in a line, my brother said that he did his best when he was doing his roof our roof back when, and he was finding that he was gradually sloping down. So that's the benefit from one of these. Doing it this way is having these boards already there, and you have kind of a reference. But I decided to put a string on one of them, and then just, since I know these two are straight, and I could just keep going down the row like that, and I'll eventually line this up with, there's one in the middle over there. So that's just one little method. I'm sure you could always do like a, snap a line or whatever, but I just don't have that, so this is what I'm doing. So I'm going to see if I could explain this, but I have to align all of those grooves on each panel coming down off the roof and then onto the side panels. And so what I run into when you are diving into something for the first time, you have to be really methodical and piece things together before you actually lay it in there, and this is one of the mistakes that I ran into. But there's nothing really that I can do other than just go for it and be as careful as I can. But basically I just fit this piece up there that's supposed to go up there, and those grooves don't line, and so I'm gonna have to move this side panel over an inch or so. I just wanted to point that out because it's just what you run into. You just have to go slow, and I have to figure out, do I do the side panels first or that first, because I have to get to these screws, screw them in before I put the top one on the roof, because it's going to hang over. So all this little details. This is the only way I could really solve that, because on this side panel I have to screw in the screws on the top of that all the way down. So but I needed these on the roof on first so I could slide it in, match it up, line it up with the grooves. So I only put in a couple screws on that part of the roof. And so once I get the side paneling in, I'll have to remove the screws and lift it up a little bit to get the top screws in there. So that's what I had to creatively think of. I don't know if that's normal or not, but you can see where I'm going with this though. The challenges that I'm running into are I didn't know how to get the angle right, cut it, and mark it out and everything. So I decided to put the panels on, temporarily screw them in there, and then I just took a marker and I traced it where I needed it. So that'll work good enough. I had those corner pieces that are going to cover a lot of, pretty much all the corners, so even if it's not completely perfect, it'll be okay. So that's what I'm learning as I go. And the other thing I was learning is that these ribs here, you have to think ahead and calculate where the ribs are going to be so you don't end up with a rib like right where the corner edge is going to go. And so far I've been lucky. They've all been landed on a pretty good space, except for this one. This one's getting a little too close to the edge, and so my edging is gonna have to sit right there, and it'll stick out a little bit more than the rest of them, but it's not going to be that noticeable. But I didn't know that until now, so I feel really lucky so far. This part I'm not sure how I'm going to measure out, get the angles right. Could probably do something similar as I did over there, but I have to get them fitting in there, and this has a slight challenge of this extra space I have to cut off and then fit it up in there. So that's going to be one challenge, and the other challenges are cutting the panels in right here. And it may see, at first I was thinking, oh, it's pretty simple, just slap on the panels and everything, and it is mostly if the wide open spaces, but the spaces where you have to cut out and fit in perfectly, have to do a little more thinking ahead and planning out, because I only have 4 full-size panels left for that go 9 feet up, so I have to make sure I make every panel count so I'm not wasting a panel. So that makes me a little nervous about I've got to make sure I do this right as I go and then plan it out so I'm not cutting up too many pieces and making them worthless. So well, that worked good enough for me, good enough for my first time. Got it close enough, and that trim is gonna just cover it up. It'll look alright. Finally got the basics on there, the ridge top, and some of the, what do you call it, rake edging or whatever it is. Got it basically in place, some screws in there to hold it in. I mean, it's just lining it up and making sure they're straight and everything, but pretty much got it temporarily all on there, so at least the rain and the leaves and everything will not get caught up in there anymore. This is the challenge I have on this side, is I would either have to buy more metal or something to cover that inside part, and I don't have any whatever you call it, edging, drip edge stuff for right on top of the tar paper on the edge. So I'm going to use some of the old remnants of these panels that I cut off, and I'm just gonna bend it up, cut it up, and make it fit in there. So this is my bender, and this home stretch is probably the hardest to be motivated in. Roofing is not the funnest, and you have to worry about all the details about how everything's going to fit together, and so you have to think through a lot of things. And I take 5 times as long just because I just want to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong, and I run into problems later. One thing I did do is I made these roof panels a little bit longer, so it has kind of a drip edge up there, and I may need to come in later and do an actual drip edge for the corner under the, or just above the tar paper in there. It may not be necessary just because that roof comes out extra long, so I don't know. I'll just decide later. So I need to explain this part real quick because there really isn't a procedure for this as far as I've seen. Since I'm doing this air gap panel thing, I've got to figure out how to do this J-trim. It'll work okay for the sides. I have to, I'm going to have to staple it in where the wood is so it accommodates for the gap, so the metal paneling can slide right in there. It will be sticking out a little bit further than normal if I did it flush with the wall, but I'm going to put some extra caulking in there so that it seals that shut. That's just what I have to keep in mind, is the caulking and keeping all the gaps filled in. And then the bottom piece as well. So the bottom and top piece are going to be, I didn't plan ahead for that, so I need to put another piece of board. I have these boards in there that I'll put underneath there so I could mount it on that so it sticks out that little bit. If I were to do this over again, I would probably make this 1 by 2 inch board up a little bit so I could mount it on that. I could technically still do that, but I think I'm just gonna put an extra piece of wood in there to have it stick out where I need it. Pretty much this is just for the finished look, and if everything's sealed up in the window, it should be right. So I just needed to point that out. The rest of it, I have pretty much everything together. For the first tacking in, then I have to seal it up with caulking or some kind of spongy mesh or something, whatever I need to do to fill in those gaps so the wasps and other things don't get in there. I'll give you a quick update on what I'm doing here. I'm being a little more thorough about this on the video just because this hasn't been done before that I've seen, but it's not too much more work than just a normal lay it flat against the OSB. Essentially I'm just it's just an inch higher, and I just got 3 screws in it, and it's pretty solid, so it's not gonna go anywhere. I just had to put some extra wood on the bottom and on the top for this J edging to go in to attach on the door and the window, and I'll be doing the same on this side. So here's an extra piece of paneling. We'll just go in like that. This part of the project is taking the longest just because I have to think everything through. But this is the home stretch for the outside shell. So just have to keep plugging away at it. There you go, I got it pretty much on there. Got the trim on there, and you can see the reflection. It's like a heat shield. It's pretty awesome. Actually, when you stand next to it, when the sun's really bright, you can actually feel the heat coming from it. There's like a reflection on the ground it's like a mirror. So that's gonna be really good to reflect the heat out of there. With that 2-inch gap, it's like a heat shield. So whenever it gets hot out, I'm going to just test it to see if there's any differences in temperature. There are a couple times that I did feel a difference, but it was I couldn't really tell definitively because there was a lot of shade in the morning. So I need to get it on a hot day when the sun's just beating down on it, and then just see what the temperature difference is. But yeah, in theory, it should work. It's so bright. I was actually worried that this thing is going to get some attention from the neighborhood because it's standing out like a diamond in the rough. Almost literally. Oh, and here's another thing I just thought of in regards to things related to sheds and tiny houses and stuff, as far as regulations are concerned with that. Projecting ahead into where things are going and the housing crisis or whatever the plural is on that. So whatever the house crisis people are going to have, rent and mortgages, and you're already going to see it right now. I know there's regulations and strict restrictions everywhere about preventing people from building a tiny house or a place of dwelling in converting a garage or parking an RV on a piece of land or something. But the things are going to change right now, and we can already see it happening. And so what I see happening here is that people are going to start to feel a necessity of doing this anyways. And I would say during this time right now, start planning for it and gathering materials for that, because I really feel like that's the direction. People are already being removed from their place of residence, whatever it is, whatever crisis it is, and for housing and for rent and all that stuff. So people are going to need, by necessity and survival, to do this. So I'm thinking in the state of emergency, which I think we are in right now, it's just going to get more so. So when you're thinking of a state of emergency, just do what you need to do and think ahead to do those type of things.